It was just another busy day at a towering office building in the heart of the city. People rushed in and out, clutching coffee cups, laptops, and folders. The lobby buzzed with energy. Executives talking on their phones, visitors trying to find their way, and employees heading to meetings. Among all this chaos stood a man most people didn't notice. He wore a uniform that marked him as the security guard, standing quietly by the entrance, watching everything without saying much. That evening, something unusual happened. A group of visitors walked into the lobby looking confused. They were from different parts of the world, speaking languages no one else seemed to understand. One spoke in broken English while pointing at a map. Another tried explaining something in what sounded like Mandarin, and yet another muttered under his breath in French. It looked like they had lost their way or couldn't figure out whom to ask for help. The security guard stepped forward. At first glance, he didn't seem extraordinary. Just an ordinary guy doing his job. But then something incredible unfolded. As each person spoke, the guard responded fluently, in their own language. First, he switched to Mandarin, calmly guiding the visitor toward the elevators. Then he turned to the next person and replied in perfect French. After that, he addressed someone else in Spanish, followed by Arabic, Russian, Hindi, Portuguese, and even German. His tone was warm, confident, and natural, as if switching between languages was second nature to them. This caught the attention of Richard Langley, the CEO of the company housed in the building. Richard was passing through the lobby after a long day of meetings when he overheard the conversation. At first, he thought maybe there were multiple people helping these visitors, but when he realized it was just one man, the security guard, he stopped dead in his tracks. Curiosity got the better of him. Richard approached the guard and introduced himself. "Hi, I'm Richard," he said, extending his hand. The guard shook it firmly and replied, "Nice to meet you, sir." His voice carried respect but also a quiet confidence. "I couldn't help but overhear what you were doing," Richard continued. "How many languages do you speak?" The guard hesitated for a moment before answering modestly. 9, I think. Maybe more if you count dialects." Richard raised an eyebrow. 9? That's impressive. Where did you learn them? The guard shrugged. Just over the years. I used to listen to podcasts during my breaks, watch movies in other languages, and practice online whenever I could. It started as a hobby, really. Never thought it'd come in handy like this. Richard nodded thoughtfully. This wasn't just some random skill. It was a gift. And gifts like this don't come around often. As the CEO of a global tech company, Richard knew how hard it was to navigate cultural differences and communicate effectively across borders. Expanding into new markets always came with challenges, misunderstandings, mistranslations, and missed opportunities. Yet here was someone who could effortlessly bridge those gaps. For the rest of the night, Richard couldn't stop thinking about the encounter. What if this man's talents weren't being fully utilized? What if his ability to connect with people from all walks of life could transform the way the company operated? The idea lingered in Richard's mind, growing stronger with every passing hour. Little did the security guard know, his life, and the lives of everyone around him, was about to change forever. All because one curious CEO decided to stop and listen. That night, Richard couldn't sleep. His mind kept replaying the scene in the lobby, the security guard effortlessly switching between languages, the visitors' faces lighting up with relief, and the sheer ease with which communication barriers were broken. It wasn't just impressive, it was inspiring. For years, Richard's company had struggled to expand into new markets. They had hired consultants, sent teams abroad for training, and invested heavily in translation software. Yet, despite all these efforts, cultural misunderstandings still caused problems. Deals fell through, campaigns flopped, and partnerships soured, all because they hadn't been able to connect deeply with people from different parts of the world. As he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, an idea began to form. What if the solution had been right under their noses all along? The security guard's talent wasn't just about speaking multiple languages. It was about understanding cultures, connecting with people, and building trust. These were skills money couldn't buy. But here was someone who already possessed them. someone who worked in the same building, day in and day out, unnoticed by most. By morning, Richard had made up his mind. He called the security guard into his office. When the man arrived, he looked nervous, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. "Is everything okay, sir?" he asked, clearly expecting to be reprimanded for something. Richard smiled warmly. "Everything's fine," he said. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something important. Do you have a moment?" The guard nodded hesitantly. "I watched you last night," Richard began. "The way you handled those visitors, it was incredible. Not many people can do what you did. And I've been thinking, we could use your skills in a bigger way." The guard blinked, caught off guard. "My skills, sir?" "Yes," Richard replied. "You see, our company is trying to grow globally, but we keep running into challenges when working with other countries. Misunderstandings happen, deals fall apart, and opportunities get missed. We need someone who can help us navigate those differences. Someone like you." For a moment, the guard just stared at him, unsure how to respond. Finally, he shook his head. "Sir, I'm just a security guard. I don't know anything about business or strategy. I wouldn't even know where to start." Richard leaned forward, his expression serious but encouraging. "Let me tell you something. Sometimes the best ideas come from unexpected places. You might not have a fancy degree or years of corporate experience, but you have something far more valuable: real-world knowledge. You've lived this, not studied it. And that's exactly what we need." The guard still looked uncertain, but curiosity was starting to replace doubt. "What would I even do?" he asked. Richard explained his plan. Instead of staying behind the desk in the lobby, the guard would join the executive team temporarily. His role would be to act as a cultural advisor and strategist, helping the company better understand international markets. He'd attend meetings, review marketing materials, and offer insights on how to communicate effectively with clients from different backgrounds. It wouldn't be easy, Richard admitted, but he believed the guard had what it took to succeed. After a long pause, the guard finally agreed, though reluctantly. "All right, sir," he said. "I'll give it a try, but I hope you won't regret this." "I won't," Richard assured him with a smile. "Trust me, this could change everything." Word spread quickly through the office. By lunchtime, everyone was talking about the security guard who had suddenly become part of the executive team. Some people were skeptical. "How can a security guard advise the CEO?" they whispered. Others thought it was a publicity stunt, a way to make the company look progressive. And then there were those who felt inspired. If someone like him could rise above expectations, maybe they could too. At first, the guard felt completely out of place. Walking into boardroom meetings filled with executives in suits made him question whether he belonged there. Every time he spoke, he braced himself for judgment. But instead of criticism, he found respect. People listened carefully when he shared his thoughts, especially when he pointed out things others hadn't considered. For example, during a discussion about launching a product in Southeast Asia, the guard mentioned that certain colors used in the packaging might carry negative connotations in some regions. Another time, he suggested tweaking the tone of an advertisement aimed at Latin American audiences, explaining that humor translated differently depending on the culture. His input wasn't just helpful, it was transformative. Slowly, the skepticism faded. Even the harshest critics started seeing value in his contributions. One senior manager later admitted, "I didn't think much of it at first, but now I realize we've been missing so much. This guy sees things we don't because he's lived them." But it wasn't just about the work. The guard's presence challenged the way people thought about roles and potential. Employees began looking at each other differently, wondering what hidden talents might exist among their colleagues. Conversations shifted from titles and positions to skills and passions. The entire atmosphere in the office changed, for the better. Richard watched all of this unfold with quiet satisfaction. He had taken a risk, sure, but it was paying off in ways he hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just about solving business problems anymore. It was about creating a culture where everyone felt valued and empowered to contribute. And as for the guard, he started to find his footing. Each small success boosted his confidence, pushing him to take on bigger challenges. Little by little, he stopped seeing himself as just a security guard and started embracing the possibility of being something more. What happened next would shock everyone, but that's a story for another time. The guard's first few weeks in the executive team were anything but easy. He walked into meetings feeling like a fish out of water. Everyone else had degrees from prestigious universities, years of experience in corporate settings, and polished resumes that screamed expert. And then there was him, someone who had spent most of his career ensuring doors were locked and visitors signed in. The contrast wasn't just obvious, it felt overwhelming. At first, he kept quiet during discussions, afraid to say the wrong thing or embarrass himself. But Richard noticed this and gently encouraged him. "You're here because you bring something unique to the table," Richard told him one afternoon. "Don't hold back. Your perspective matters more than you think." Those words stuck with him. Slowly, he began to speak up, not loudly or confidently at first, but enough to make his presence felt. One day, during a meeting about expanding into India, the marketing team presented a campaign idea. It looked great on paper, colorful visuals, catchy slogans, and a focus on family values. But as the guard listened, something didn't sit right with him. "Excuse me," he said hesitantly, raising his hand. All eyes turned to him. "I'm not sure if this will work across all regions in India. Different states have different languages, traditions, and even preferences when it comes to communication styles. For example, what works in Mumbai might not resonate in Chennai." The room fell silent for a moment. Then one of the senior managers leaned forward. "Can you explain more?" she asked. He nodded and went on to describe how regional dialects and cultural nuances could affect how people responded to advertisements. He suggested tailoring the campaign slightly for each region, using local references and language variations to make it feel more personal. By the end of his explanation, the entire team was nodding in agreement. That small moment became a turning point. People started seeking out his opinion, asking him to review presentations, and even inviting him to brainstorming sessions. What surprised him most was how much they valued his input, not because he was extraordinary, but because he offered something authentic. He wasn't speaking from textbooks or theories. He was sharing real-life experiences and insights. But not everyone was convinced. Some employees still whispered behind closed doors, questioning whether the guard was truly qualified for such an important role. A few openly criticized the decision, calling it unprofessional or a waste of resources. One manager even joked, "Next thing you know, we'll be letting the janitor run HR." Hearing those comments stung, but the guard tried not to let them get to him. Instead, he focused on proving his worth through actions rather than words. Every time he caught a potential issue before it became a problem, every time his suggestions led to better outcomes, he earned a little more respect. It wasn't immediate, and it wasn't universal, but progress was happening. One incident, in particular, silenced many of his critics. The company was negotiating a partnership with a major Brazilian firm. Everything seemed to be going smoothly until the final stages, when talks suddenly stalled. No one could figure out why. The numbers were good, the terms were fair, and both sides wanted the deal to happen. Frustrated, Richard called the guard into his office. "I need your help," Richard said. "We've hit a wall, and I don't understand why. Can you take a look?" The guard agreed, though he wasn't sure what he could do. He reviewed the emails exchanged between the two companies, paying close attention to the tone and phrasing. That's when he noticed something subtle, a phrase in one of the messages that, while polite in English, carried a slightly impersonal or cold connotation in Portuguese. "It's not about the content," he explained to Richard. "It's about how it's being said. In Brazil, relationships are key. They might feel like we're treating this too transactionally instead of building a genuine connection." Richard nodded thoughtfully. "What should we do?" "Let me draft a new message," the guard replied. "Something warmer, more personal. Maybe mention how excited we are to work together and highlight shared goals." The revised email was sent, And within hours, the Brazilian team responded positively. The negotiations resumed, and soon after, the deal was finalized. When the news broke, the entire office celebrated. Even some of the harshest critics had to admit they couldn't have done it without him. As time went on, the guard's confidence grew. He stopped seeing himself as an outsider and started embracing his role as part of the team. He realized that his background wasn't a liability. It was an asset. His ability to connect with people, understand their needs, and bridge gaps came, not from formal education but from life itself. And that made him uniquely valuable. The shift wasn't just personal. It rippled through the company culture. Employees began looking at each other differently. They started asking questions. Who else among us has untapped talents? What hidden skills are we overlooking? Conversations around the water cooler changed from gossip to discovery. People shared stories about hobbies, passions, and side projects they'd never mentioned before. The guard's journey inspired others to believe that maybe, just maybe, they too could break free from the boxes society had put them in. And Richard? He watched all of this unfold with pride. He hadn't just found a solution to a business challenge. He had ignited a movement. One that reminded everyone that greatness isn't defined by titles, degrees, or roles, but by the willingness to see potential where others see limitations. But the guard's story was far from over. Little did anyone know the biggest test and the greatest triumph was yet to come. As weeks turned into months, the guard's role in the company kept growing. He had started as someone who simply offered insights during meetings, but now he was being trusted with bigger responsibilities. Richard saw how much value he brought to the table and decided it was time to test his limits. One morning, Richard called him into his office again. The guard walked in expecting another routine discussion about upcoming projects or strategies. Instead, Richard handed him a thick folder filled with documents. "I have a challenge for you," Richard said, leaning back in his chair. "We're launching a new product in 5 countries at once: Germany, Japan, Brazil, South Africa, and Saudi Arabia. It's a huge opportunity, but also a massive risk. I want you to lead this launch." The guard froze. Lead? Him? For a moment he thought he'd misheard. "Sir, I don't know if I can do that," he stammered. "This is way beyond anything I've ever done. I'm not even sure where to begin." Richard smiled reassuringly. "I wouldn't ask if I didn't believe you could handle it. You've already proven yourself in so many ways. This is just the next step. Besides, you won't be alone. You'll have teams supporting you every step of the way. But I need someone who can see the big picture and the small details too. Someone who understands people. That's you." The weight of what Richard was asking hit him like a ton of bricks. Launching a product in one country was hard enough. Doing it in 5 vastly different ones? It felt impossible. But deep down, he knew Richard wouldn't push him unless he truly believed in him. Taking a deep breath, he nodded. "All right, sir. I'll try my best." The days that followed were a whirlwind. The guard dove headfirst into research, learning everything he could about the markets they were targeting. He studied cultural norms, consumer behavior, and local trends. He met with marketing teams, sales reps, and logistics experts, piecing together a plan that would work across all 5 countries. At first, it was overwhelming. There were so many moving parts, so many things that could go wrong. But he reminded himself why he was doing this, not just for the company, but to prove to himself that he could rise to the occasion. One of the biggest hurdles came early on. Each country required a tailored approach, but resources were limited. How could they create unique campaigns without blowing the budget? Sitting in his temporary office late one night, the guard stared at the pile of notes in front of him. Then an idea struck him. Instead of creating entirely separate campaigns, why not find common threads that connected all 5 regions? Themes like family, innovation, and trust resonated universally, even if the execution varied slightly. He pitched the idea to the team the next day. To his relief, they loved it. From there, the pieces began falling into place. For Germany, they emphasized precision and quality, a nod to the country's reputation for excellence. In Japan, they highlighted harmony and community, aligning with local values. In Brazil, they focused on energy and celebration, using vibrant colors and upbeat messaging. South Africa's campaign leaned into resilience and progress, while Saudi Arabia's centered on tradition and modernity working hand in hand. But challenges kept coming. During the planning phase, a key supplier in Japan unexpectedly backed out, threatening to delay the entire launch. Panicked, the guard reached out to contacts he'd made through his language skills and managed to secure a replacement within days. Another issue arose in Brazil, where a translation error nearly led to a PR disaster. Thankfully, the guard caught it in time and corrected the mistake before it went public. Through it all, he relied heavily on his ability to connect with people. Whether it was calming a frustrated partner in Germany or persuading a hesitant distributor in South Africa, he approached every interaction with empathy and patience. His colleagues noticed this too. "It's not just his languages that make him great," one team member remarked. "It's how he listens. He makes everyone feel heard." Finally, the day of the launch arrived. Across 5 continents, the MIAI product rolled out simultaneously. Social media buzzed with excitement. Customers lined up outside stores and reviews poured in, most of them glowing. Sales exceeded expectations in every single market. Back at headquarters, the office erupted in cheers. Employees hugged each other, popped champagne, and celebrated late into the night. For the guard, it was a moment of pure validation. All the doubts, the sleepless nights, the moments when he wondered if he was cut out for this, it all melted away. He wasn't just a security guard anymore. He was someone who had taken on one of the toughest challenges the company had ever faced, and succeeded. The success of the launch didn't just boost profits, it changed perceptions. Those who had doubted him before now looked at him with admiration. Even the harshest critics admitted they'd been wrong. "I never thought it would work," one manager confessed during the celebration. "But he proved us all wrong. And honestly, I couldn't be happier about it." Richard pulled him aside later that evening. "You did amazing," he said, clapping him on the shoulder. "This isn't just a win for the company. It's a win for everyone who believes in second chances and untapped potential." The guard smiled, feeling a mix of pride and gratitude. "Thank you for believing in me, sir. I couldn't have done it without your support or the team's. You earned this," Richard replied firmly. "Now let's keep going. There's still so much more we can achieve." What happened next took everyone by surprise. Inspired by his journey, the guard decided to use his newfound influence to help others. He realized that his story wasn't just about him. It was about showing people that no matter where they came from or what their title was, they had something valuable to offer, and he wanted to make sure those voices were heard, but that's a story for another time. The guard's success didn't just change his life. It sparked a ripple effect throughout the company. People started looking at each other differently. Conversations shifted from, "What's your job title?" to, "What are you capable of?" Employees who had once felt stuck in their roles began wondering if they too could break free from the boxes they'd been placed in. The guard saw this shift and knew he couldn't let it end there. He wanted to turn inspiration into action. One evening, after another long day of meetings, he sat alone in his office, staring at the glowing screen of his laptop. His mind wandered back to his early days at the company, standing in the lobby watching people rush past without giving him a second glance. Back then, he never imagined he'd be sitting where he was now. But he also remembered the moments when doubt crept in, the whispers behind closed doors, the sideways glances, the feeling that maybe he didn't belong. Those memories stayed with him, not as scars, but as reminders of how easy it was to overlook potential. He grabbed a notebook and started jotting down ideas. What if there was a way to uncover hidden talents within the company? What if every employee, no matter their role, had the chance to shine? By the time he finished writing, he had sketched out a plan for something he called hidden gems. The next morning, he walked into Richard's office and laid out his proposal. "Sir," he began, "I've been thinking about how much this company has changed since I joined the executive team. But I know there are others like me, people with skills or passions that aren't being used. What if we created a program to find and nurture those talents? Richard listened intently as the guard explained his vision. The program would involve workshops, mentorship opportunities, and open forums where employees could showcase their abilities, whether it was coding, painting, public speaking, or anything else. The goal wasn't just to identify talent, but to create a culture where everyone felt valued and empowered to contribute beyond their job descriptions. "I love it," Richard said when the guard finished. "Let's make it happen." The announcement of the Hidden Gems program sent waves of excitement through the company. Flyers went up on bulletin boards, emails landed in inboxes, and managers encouraged their teams to participate. At first, some employees were hesitant. Would anyone really care about their side projects or hobbies? But as stories began pouring in, doubts turned into enthusiasm. Take the IT technician, for example. During one of the workshops, he revealed that he was an amateur photographer in his spare time. His photos, a mix of landscapes and candid shots, were stunning. Someone suggested using his work for the company's social media campaigns. Within weeks, his images became a hit, drawing praise from clients and followers alike. Then there was the janitor who had studied engineering in college but dropped out due to financial struggles. When he shared his story during a forum, the head of the R&D department invited him to sit in on brainstorming sessions. His practical insights led to improvements in product design that saved the company thousands of dollars. Even quieter voices found a platform. A receptionist who loved writing poetry submitted a piece for the company newsletter. Her words resonated deeply with readers, sparking conversations about creativity and self-expression in the workplace. Another employee, a delivery driver, revealed his knack for problem-solving by suggesting a more efficient route system. His idea reduced delivery time significantly. Each success story reinforced the program's purpose. It wasn't just about finding hidden talents. It was about creating a sense of belonging. Employees who had once felt invisible now felt seen. Teams grew closer as they discovered new dimensions of their colleagues. Collaboration flourished because people started valuing each other for who they truly were, not just what their job titles said. For the guard, seeing these transformations filled him with pride. He often thought about how far he'd come, from standing unnoticed in the lobby to becoming someone who inspired others to dream bigger. But he never let himself get caught up in the spotlight. Instead, he continued working quietly behind the scenes, ensuring the program reached as many people as possible. Richard watched all of this unfold with a sense of fulfillment. "You've done more than solve problems," he told the guard one afternoon. "You've reminded us what leadership is really about. It's not about titles or power. It's about lifting others up." The guard smiled humbly. "I just gave people a chance to show what they're capable of. They did the rest." As months passed, the program expanded beyond the company's walls. Other businesses took notice and reached out, asking how they could implement similar initiatives. The guard traveled to conferences, sharing his story and encouraging leaders to look beyond resumes and job descriptions. He spoke passionately about the importance of seeing people, not positions, and trusting in their potential. But perhaps the most profound impact was felt within the company itself. Morale soared, productivity increased, and innovation thrived. Employees weren't just clocking in and out anymore. They were invested in the company's success because they felt personally connected to it. Ideas flowed freely, and barriers between departments crumbled. The workplace transformed into a vibrant community where everyone had a voice. Through it all, the guard remained grounded. He knew none of this would have been possible without the risks he and Richard had taken. Their partnership had proven the true progress came not from sticking to the status quo but from embracing change, even when it seemed risky or unconventional. Still, he couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. His journey had already surpassed anything he could have imagined. Yet, deep down, he sensed that his story wasn't over. There were still lessons to learn, challenges to face, and lives to touch. And so, with gratitude in his heart and determination, in his step he prepared to take the next leap, whatever it might be. Years passed, and the guard's journey became the stuff of legend within the company. What had started as a quiet act of noticing someone's talent in the lobby grew into a movement that reshaped not just one organization, but an entire industry. The Hidden Gems program spread like wildfire, inspiring other companies to rethink how they valued their employees. Leaders from around the world came to visit, eager to learn how this simple idea had transformed so many lives. For the guard, himself, life took unexpected turns. He eventually stepped down from his role as a strategist, not because he was tired, but because he wanted to focus on something bigger. His heart was set on traveling the world, sharing his story with anyone who would listen. He believed that the lessons he'd learned weren't meant to stay confined to boardrooms or corporate offices. They belonged everywhere, in classrooms, community centers, and even small villages where people dreamed of doing more than what society told them they could. His travels took him to places he'd only ever read about. In bustling cities, he spoke at conferences, urging business owners to see their workforce as a treasure trove of untapped potential. In rural areas, he met farmers, artisans, and teachers, listening to their stories and encouraging them to believe in themselves. He often said, "Greatness isn't something you're born with. It's something you uncover when someone believes in you." One of his favorite stops was a small coastal town in Southeast Asia. There he met a young woman who ran a tiny cafe by the beach. She confessed that she'd always dreamed of opening her own restaurant but didn't think she had what it took. After hearing her story, the guard spent hours talking to her, helping her map out a plan. Months later, he received a letter saying she'd opened a second location, thanks to his encouragement. Stories like hers reminded him why he kept going, because every person deserved a chance to shine. Back at the company, the legacy he left behind continued to thrive. The Hidden Gems program evolved into a global initiative, connecting employees across continents. People shared their talents online through videos, blogs, and virtual events. A software engineer in Europe collaborated with a graphic designer in South America to create an app that helped track carbon footprints. A customer service representative in Africa partnered with a marketing specialist in Asia to launch a campaign promoting mental health awareness. These collaborations proved that innovation knew no borders, and neither did human potential. Richard, now retired, often reflected on the decision that had changed everything. "I thought I was taking a risk," he once said during an interview. "But really it was the smartest thing I ever did. Sometimes all it takes is believing in someone, even if they don't believe in themselves yet." Employees who had been part of the early days of the program carried its spirit forward. The IT technician turned photographer became a mentor for aspiring artists. The janitor turned engineer led workshops on practical problem solving. And the delivery driver who reimagined routes, he ended up training new hires, teaching them efficiency and teamwork. The company itself flourished, becoming known not just for its products but for its culture. Job applicants flocked to work there not because of salaries or perks, but because they wanted to be part of something meaningful. Employees stayed longer, worked harder, and cared more deeply because they felt valued, not as cogs in a machine but as individuals with unique gifts. As for the guard, his final years were filled with purpose. He wrote a book about his experiences titled Breaking the Mold, which became a bestseller. It wasn't just a memoir. It was a guide for anyone who felt overlooked or underestimated. He spoke about failure, fear, and finding courage in unlikely places. "We spend so much time trying to fit into boxes," he wrote, "but the truth is we're meant to break them. You don't have to wait for permission to be great. You just have to start believing." When he passed away, the world mourned the loss of a man who had touched countless lives. Tributes poured in from every corner, from executives who credited him with saving their businesses to ordinary people whose dreams he'd reignited. His portrait hung in the company's headquarters, alongside a plaque that read, "He taught us to see greatness where others saw limits." Even today, his influence lives on. Schools teach his story as a lesson in leadership and empathy. Companies use his methods to foster inclusivity and innovation. And individuals remind themselves daily that no matter where they come from or what they do, they have the power to make a difference. In the end, his legacy wasn't about languages or strategies or programs. It was about people. About seeing them, hearing them, and giving them a chance to show the world what they're capable of. Because greatness isn't found in titles or degrees. It's found in hearts brave enough to try. And so, the tale of the security guard who rose above expectations serves as a timeless reminder. When you take the time to notice someone's potential, you might just change the world, for them, for yourself, and for everyone around you.